Blood was literally spilled on palace floors before kings learned this lesson. The moment you try to own all the power, you lose everything, including your head. Stay locked in until the final seconds because the bonus fact waiting for you at the end will make you look at every living royal family in a completely different way. Welcome back to the Evolution of Power series. In our previous episodes, we explored how authority has shifted and transformed across civilizations. Today, we are diving into one of the most fascinating compromises in political history, the constitutional monarchy, a system where crowns still glitter, but parliaments hold the real keys. So let us start at the beginning. For thousands of years, monarchs ruled with absolute authority. The king or queen was the law. Their word was final. Whether we look at ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, or imperial China, the pattern was similar. One person sat at the top claiming divine right or military supremacy, and everyone else followed. But here is where things get interesting. Absolute power has a fatal flaw. It depends entirely on the strength and wisdom of a single individual. A great king could build an empire. A terrible one could destroy it in a generation. People started to notice this pattern, and resentment began to build. The first major crack in absolute monarchy appeared in England in the year 1215. A group of rebellious barons forced King John to sign the Magna Carta. Now, this document did not create democracy overnight, far from it, but it established a revolutionary principle that even a king must follow certain rules. The monarch was no longer above the law. That single idea, written on parchment over 800 years ago, planted a seed that would eventually reshape governments across the entire planet. For centuries after the Magna Carta, England experienced a tug-of-war between royal authority and parliamentary power. Kings pushed back, parliaments pushed harder. This tension exploded in 1642 when England descended into civil war. King Charles I believed he ruled by divine right and refused to share power with Parliament. The result was devastating. The war ended with something unthinkable. The king was publicly executed in 1649. England briefly experimented with a republic under Oliver Cromwell, but it did not last. The monarchy was restored in 1660, but things had fundamentally changed. The crown came back, but it came back on a leash. Then in 1688, the Glorious Revolution happened. Parliament essentially invited William of Orange to take the throne, but only under strict conditions. The following year, the English Bill of Rights was enacted, and this document formally established what we now recognize as constitutional monarchy. The monarch remained head of state, but real governing power shifted to elected representatives. So how does a constitutional monarchy actually work? Think of it as a partnership with clearly defined roles. The monarch serves as the symbolic head of the nation. They represent continuity, tradition, and national identity. Meanwhile, the actual business of governing, making laws, setting budgets, running foreign policy, all of that falls to an elected parliament and a prime minister. The monarch typically performs ceremonial duties. They open parliament, they meet with foreign leaders, they award honors. In many constitutional monarchies, the king or queen must remain politically neutral. They do not campaign for parties. They do not publicly criticize government policy. Their role is to unite, not to divide. Now, this might sound like the monarch is just a figurehead, and in many cases that is largely true, but do not underestimate the power of symbolism. The British monarch, for example, technically has the right to dissolve parliament, to refuse to sign laws, and to appoint the prime minister. These powers are almost never used, but they exist as a constitutional safety net. Would you like to be part of the Royal Curious Owl flock? Hit the subscribe! Constitutional monarchy spread far beyond England. After revolutions and political upheavals across Europe in the 18th and 19th centuries, many nations adopted this model. Sweden transitioned gradually, beginning reforms in the early 1800s. Japan adopted a constitutional framework in 1889 with the Meiji Constitution, though it took until after World War II for the emperor to become a truly ceremonial figure. Spain restored its constitutional monarchy in 1978 after decades of dictatorship under Franco. Today, there are roughly 43 monarchies in the world, and the vast majority of them are constitutional. Countries like Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, Australia, and Japan all operate under this system. And here's what is remarkable. Many of these nations consistently rank among the most democratic, prosperous, and stable countries on Earth. The genius of constitutional monarchy lies in its balance. It preserves historical identity and cultural tradition while embracing democratic governance. The crown provides stability during political crises because the head of state is not tied to any political party. When governments fall or elections get messy, the monarch remains as a steady anchor. Now, as promised, here is your bonus fact. The longest reigning monarch in a constitutional system was Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom, who served for over 70 years. But here is what most people do not know. During her reign, she worked with 15 different prime ministers, from Winston Churchill all the way to Liz Truss. That means one single monarch provided continuity across 15 changes of government. That is the hidden superpower of constitutional monarchy. Stability through change. Thank you for watching this episode of Evolution of Power. Drop a comment telling me which system of government you think works best, and I will see you in the next episode.